Hello, everybody. Hello. Good evening. Good morning. Good morning. Good evening. Good evening. Good morning. Got my Patriot propaganda mug. And yes, some fluoridated tap water. Hope everyone's doing well. I know you guys were complaining about the volume last time on this background music. Trying to figure that out. How are we all doing in chat? Colby Melvin, Kelly Lloyd, Kev before 7, Vincent Rempel. You related to Michelle? Vincent? Canon. 2 flip S3.5 twists. 2 flips, 3.5 twists. That's how you say it, right? 2 flips, 3.5 twists. James Bullock, Jennifer Francis, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. Prairie, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Chucky's Extremist Circus, welcome to the stream. Find your friends with Island Jason, good evening, sir. Slavador Deli. Art Story, Legend of Nelda, Tears of the Incel. That is a name. That is a username right there. That is a screen name right there. Yes, welcome to the stream. Tonight we're going to be reacting to Ian Runkle, also known as Runkle of the Bailey on YouTube. Cool guy. He's talking here to what's his face from Toronto Sun. We'll be reacting to this video. They talk all about Bill C-63, and yeah, Mr. Runkle is a mayor. He's a lawyer. So we'll be hearing his kind of take, his criticisms of Bill C-63. Really looking forward to it. I think we're going to get some good stuff out of that. That's going to be the main event tonight. Yeah, you know, there's, oh man, there were so many things that came across my Twitter feed this morning, though, that I'm like, oh my gosh, there's just so much to talk about. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to get into. But I thought, you know, Greg, you got to focus on saving free speech, you know. Sure. Are there hordes of East Indians coming into Canada? Yes, there are. Is there a crazy battle going on right now between Candace Owens and Daily Wire people? Yeah, it's quite interesting. But I gotta keep my eye on the ball here. Got to keep my eye on the ball and get ahead of the game in terms of stopping Bill C-63. Focus all my effort on that. But it's just crazy, isn't it? It's so disorienting when you open up Twitter these days. All the different things happening, and who's doing anything about it? You know, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And yeah, I also said, you know, calling all patriots or calling all political prisoners. That's another thing that I might kind of brainstorm just kind of live on air with you guys, which is the idea that, you know, even a Conservative Party supporter, even a Pierre Poilievre supporter, he might, you know, they obviously don't like Trudeau, but they might be a low information person as well. You know, there's probably some Conservative Party supporters who was like, oh yes, the trucker convoy was too far right. Like there probably is a collection of Conservative Party supporters who kind of are in that camp. They still watch some mainstream news potentially. And even to talk to these people about Bill C-63 and to say, hey, it's the end of free speech, they might be like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And I guess the idea is we have all these different political prisoners in different forms. There's the Jeremy McKenzies of the world. There's the Archer Pawlowskis of the world. There's the lovely nurses from Frontline Nurses. You know, there's these many different organizations. That's just a few off the top of my head. There's other pastors, Hildebrandt. There's a lot. Tamara Litch, Chris Barber, you know, and on and on. And the thing is, naturally, not surprisingly, they're all focused on fighting their legal battle. You know, as a political prisoner, you have to deal with your legal nonsense that the state is putting you through. And I guess it's the idea of simplifying and honestly, quite frankly, you know, maybe even just commodifying their story in a sort of like a little bite-sized thing that is quick and gets to the point of, hey, I'm a political prisoner. This is happening. This happened to me because of my political opinion. This happened to me in Canada. And I guess the idea would to basically create a highlight reel of all the political prisoners in Canada, and just to kind of quickly and effectively show Canadians, like, hey, this is this is happening. This is here are such examples. Because I think almost by design, that's not at the forefront of everyone's mind, because of the influence of Pierre Poilievre and his watered down conservatism and watered down leadership, which is very much just more of the establishment status quo. Because of this really weak leadership, it's not that we forget, but it's not at the forefront of everyone's mind. All that's at the forefront is we need to vote in the other guy, right? We need to vote in the other guy. Nothing to do with these alarming trends of tyranny, authoritarianism. What's the other one? Dictatorships. There's all these words, right? All these words. And, I don't know if the words do it any justice, especially for people who haven't heard of this stuff. If you believe our rights and freedoms are being taken away, then yeah, you'll probably, sure, authoritarian, you'll hear these words and be like, yeah, I agree with that. But for someone who doesn't think that, using those words might just be kind of like falling on deaf ears, and they'll be left kind of thinking, this person's crazy. What are they talking about? Whereas, if there's more of a compilation of, hey, here's a story of a whole bunch of different Canadians who are being targeted for their political beliefs. I don't know what label you put on that, but it's bad news. Like, instead of maybe the label you would put on it is, hey, political prisoners, people persecuted for their opinions. Like, that's something that people could understand, right? They could see it, that people are being persecuted for speaking freely and just having the wrong opinion. I'm thinking like that might be more powerful, more powerful, if that makes sense. Let's see if this works. I'm gonna try something here. Yeah. Sometimes I'm doing a lot of note writing on the screen, so I thought I'd just this would just be an idea, like giving a sort of quick script to a political prisoner. Hello, my name is Jeremy McKenzie, for example. Once I started criticizing the RCMP in Canada, I was smeared by anti-hate. I was, he would have a long list in this here. Like what happened to him in terms of being persecuted, and now my life is different would be the second gap. But like, having some sort of formula to give to each political prisoner, they'd fill it out and maybe like make a video about it. And then also them saying at the end, I believe I was targeted for my personal and political beliefs. Boom. And then make some sort of compilation of that. That sound crazy? Does that make sense? I also changed the lighting in here. I think it's kind of cool. But we got a little guy back there. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess another thing to bring up too is because we had a really good stream last time because we went over this really dense video of CJA talking about Bill C-63. We had Michael Geist talking about it, and it was a Zoom call for, a Jewish advocacy group, and very interesting stuff. A lot of great questions were asked about it, honestly. Sidebar. Oh my goodness. Terrifying photo. Terrifying photo. Terrifying photo right here. But yeah, someone's pointed this out already. A Diagolon guy account pointed this out already. It's interesting how, sexualizing children, not something that the Toronto Star wanted to call out Fred Hahn for, supporting gender ideology. Not at all something that Toronto Star cared to call out Fred Hahn for. But now that he is saying anti-Semitic things or supporting Palestine, or criticizing Israel, all of a sudden, all the mainstream news in Canada now hates this guy. Say, sexualize kids all you want. Push that all over schools across Ontario. But no. You have a political opinion when it comes to a foreign conflict that we don't like? Yeah, I don't think so. You need to resign now. No, corrupting our youth, we don't care about that. No, you can corrupt the youth as much as you'd like. Have at it. No, but you having an opinion on a foreign conflict, not all right. No, not okay. Not on our watch. Looks like he's about to eat the microphone. Yeah. There's a lot of things I could say. He is a open homosexual. For example, that microphone probably smells terrible. I probably shouldn't go into detail though, because that's kind of gross. Why his breath would smell so much. Derek Nelson says, as an American, most Canadians are persecuted, though so are we in many scenarios. Yeah, it's becoming more common, and the persecution, it's quite consistent, but it doesn't just happen by the government. I could bring up the example of Jordan Peterson, where his regulatory body as a psychologist in Ontario is coming after him for his political beliefs, right? And that's totally relevant to the conversation, because there's clearly a bias towards, generically straight white men who are patriotic and, just have kind of like somewhat traditional, somewhat conservative beliefs about the country and about men and women. And this is really nothing new. This isn't anything groundbreaking. I'm sure a lot of you know this already, but it's all kind of part of the puzzle, right? It's all part of the puzzle pieces here. Where are the tweets I was going to bring up? Oh yeah, they're over here. So yeah. We were reacting to Michael Geist on stream the other night, and this was his tweet from earlier this afternoon. A second day of bomb threats targeting synagogues in Canada. To see those that spent months saying nothing, fueling anti-Semitism with their hurtful rhetoric or gaslighting the Jewish community's fears, now feigning concern is shameful hypocrisy. And yeah, I didn't hear about this. There were bomb threats to synagogues. Obviously, that's not very fun. That's not very good. And Michael Geist, as a lawyer, as a Jewish lawyer, is obviously concerned about this type of thing. If you saw the stream last time, it was very clear that Michael Geist, as a Jewish man, is very concerned about the rise of anti-Semitism specifically. Sure, it was a Jewish group, advocacy group that he was talking to on the call. However, he clearly, I would argue, has a bias for that group, for that tribe, Jewish people. So he's more sensitive to anti-Semitism. And so if you're a Palestinian, or if you're an Arab who is sympathetic to Palestinians, doesn't mean you're a Hamas supporter, or even if you were, for sake of argument, obviously Michael Geist and friends and the Jewish advocacy group is going to be like, we don't like these people who have this opinion. how can we use Bill C-63 to persecute these people or silence them or just get their tweets out of the way? That's something that Geist was saying on the, on this kind of conversation. Hey, we just want to take it down. Can we just take it down? Let's just get rid of the person saying this. Like, yeah, okay. So now you're sounding like the tyrant, right? Like now you're sounding like the person who wants to just silence somebody. And it needs to be pointed out when it comes to the rise of tribalism that I think is happening in Canada right now. Michael Geist has never tweeted once about churches, church. Oh, yeah. Anyway, nothing to do with burning churches is my point. And you might say, Greg, he's Jewish. Why would he care about churches burning down? Well, he's concerned about bomb threats to synagogues. But he's not concerned about burning churches. Like, everyone has their own priorities. Okay? And especially when we are in different tribes, we prioritize our tribe. And Bill C-63 is like an opportunity to weaponize this bill against other tribes, against other groups. And it's just very obvious that it would be very, very messy. They did bring that up as a concern that this bill would be weaponized. It would be weaponized. And, I just brought that up as an example. Like, here's somebody who is concerned about bomb threats or, hateful rhetoric online, churches burning down across the country. No. Who cares? Who cares about that? I don't care about that. Those Canadians. I'm not going to waste my breath on Christian Canadians. Going to completely ignore that. And you can make the same argument for both, right? Because the argument of permitting arson is, oh no, but the Catholic churches did something bad in the past. You can say the same thing about Israel. But, hey, criticizing Israel, criticizing Jewish people, that's okay because they're doing bad things over there to Palestinians. They're bombing, children are dying, fill in the blank. You can make the exact same argument. And, the point is if you are a tyrant, if you are a globalist who wants to, destroy Canada, blah, 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 there's a lot of institutions you need to slowly infiltrate and start to decay, blah, blah, blah. And you have to make sure that people hate each other. And this introduction of Bill C-63 is like great because not only can you make people hate each other, you can make people start litigating each other, tattletaling each other. And not even just because they don't like each other as much as, we have a political agenda. We want to silence those people whose opinion we don't like. And yeah, it's been mentioned many times, but it bears repeating as this is a big sort of part of the argument against Bill C-63, which is how open-ended it is. How subjective it is, and how it would be simple to take the loopholes in this bill to justify hatred, to justify harm, and say, now we're going to silence this person, now we're going to censor this person because someone's emotions or someone's argument was enough to take away that person's freedom of speech. Isn't that great? Isn't that awesome? Isn't that fantastic? Gregorovic says Bill 63 won't pass. Chill out. How do you know that? How do you know that Bill C-63 won't pass? Bill C-18 passed, and now we can't get news on Instagram or Facebook anymore. That's pretty absurd and insane. You can't get news on certain social media platforms anymore. If I would have told you that before Bill C-18 passed, Gregorovic, you would have said the same thing. Bill C-18 is not going to pass. Chill out. Well, it did pass. And that's why I've started SaveFreeSpeech.ca, because I'm not just going to sit around and watch that happen again. Because I really understand where you're coming from, Gregorovic. Hey, it's not going to pass. Just chill. That's too absurd and insane. Oh, wait a minute. We've already given control of our algorithms to the Canadian government. We've already let them pass Bill C-18, which is an objective failure of legislation. A failure because the big tech basically said, hey, we're going to call your bluff, Canadian government, and now your citizens are not going to get news on Facebook and Instagram. These bureaucrats in Canada clearly don't know what they're doing. They have control of the media, so they're able to shape the public narrative, the public perception of this bill to make it very easy to just pass the legislation through. And I believe they're doing the same thing with Bill C-63 because it's to protect kids online, Gregorovic. You don't want to protect kids online? It's a very clever, very, very clever Trojan horse that they're using. And Gregorovic, on our last stream, we brought up the news that they are already talking about putting it into the budget. They're already budgeting 300 employees for the Digital Safety Board and $200 million. Just chill out, bro. It's not going to pass. They're just already putting it into the budget. And not everything, but a lot of what politicians are saying and what the news media is saying and what even the police are saying. The police talk about hate crime units. Gregorovic, have you seen what's happening in the UK? They're arresting people for Facebook posts. Ta-da! How far off is this really? It's not far off at all. It's already happening in Western countries. They're already budgeting for it in Canada, talking about the employees and talking about the money. They have a great Trojan horse of protecting kids online. And we already have this accountability lag where the Conservative Party always comes up short to stop these insane and absurd pieces of legislation, just like Bill C-18 and just like Bill C-11. So I think it's very believable that Bill C-63 would pass. Hey, bro, just chill out. And that just it triggers me on a whole nother level because I'm actually writing a Substack article right now about the problem, the kind of deep problem of Canadian identity, of sort of this Canadian attitude. Just chill, bro. Hey, we're Canadian. We're chill. We're chill. Are you upset with where we are? Where the country's at? It's because we've been too chill. That's why we're here. Because we're too chill. So you're going to show up and say, hey, man, it's not going to pass. Just chill. Yeah. I've seen this movie before. I've seen what happens. We chill out and then we get further fucked over because we were too chill. We were too passive. We were too nice. So I appreciate your comment, but respectfully, no. And by the way, what's the harm in being diligent about this? You're telling me to chill out. What's the harm in making SaveFreeSpeech.ca, making content, exposing what this bill is truly about? Because it's really the principle, right? Sure, maybe it doesn't pass, but the principle that they're actually going to even suggest this legislation is outrageous. It's insane. It shows us the character and the intention of the people in the parliament buildings, which is not to have any freedom, not to completely shut down political dissent entirely, or at least give themselves this tyrannical toolkit to do so. The fact that they're even suggesting this is crazy and needs to be called out. People are tired of the political correctness in Canada. There's even normie white Canadians who are starting to openly complain about mass immigration. This is this is a first. This is a first that regular Canadians are even starting to complain about this. And obviously they want to shut us up. They want to be able to control speech and say, oh, we need to get back to when those Canadians were terrified to say anything. If they pass this legislation that is perfect, and they clearly have the intention to silence Canadians in that vein. And in my opinion, that is way enough of a reason to continue to just ring the alarm bells about Bill C-63 over and over and over and over and over again until everybody realizes what the fuck is up. Part of my language. I'm trying to swear less. But yeah. Fogley says the Great Canadian Myth. What's that? Oh, and if you didn't know, I haven't plugged this yet. We are making a documentary on Bill C-63, the people behind Bill C-63, what it's truly about. If you want to support that, you can go to givesendgo.com/SaveFreeSpeech. We're doing great. We already have 4,000 in donations. And yeah, it's going to really tell the story of what this bill is about. Anonymous giver gave $10. Keep fighting the good fight. Droogaloo Dag. I also submitted that 50. All right. Keep fighting the good fight. Absolutely. Absolutely. Will do. Thank you so much for your donation, sir. Greatly appreciate it. And yeah, this money all goes towards editors, media professionals to make content, to make effective messaging and videos, and this documentary to ring the alarm bells, to explain to Canadians what's truly going on, and to fight back against political correctness in Canada. Right where it matters, which is the legislation that they're trying to pass right now with Bill C-63. Because that would really take political correctness and enforce it with an iron fist. Is that what you want for your country? Didn't think so. Didn't think so. Who would want that? Only the far left crazies, of course. Only the far left crazies, of course. I think I actually might have a good video to react to. Here we go. Yeah, well, let's react to this before we get into the more drier conversation. Let's do something a little more fun. This is Six Buzz. Gotta love the Six Buzz, right? You guys may have seen this. Woman goes on rant about Tim Hortons customer service and claims she was laughed at after explaining that things were, quote, done right back in the day. Let's watch, shall we?
Seriously, what is going on anymore in Canada? Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. I worked there when I was 15, 16 years old. You know what it was? Everything was clean. The bathrooms were clean, stocked. Every time I go in there, it's disgusting. My own daughter, who's 3, walked in today and said, "Ew, mommy, what's that smell?" Like, that's embarrassing. Like, what is going on with you as a corporation that nothing can go right anymore when it's literally all you do is give customer service and food? Like, these employees know nothing. When I worked there, when I was 15 and 16 years old, our primary thing was, if we weren't busy, you were cleaning, you're mopping, you're sweeping, you're making sure that everything was stocked, you're making sure that everything was good to go, and that the customer service came first. Now, I got laughed at today when I asked for my 2 ice caps that I bought, and I spent $15 there on 3 drinks and a Timbit today. And I got laughed at when I said, they brought it out, and it was up to that line right there. Tim Hortons, like,
amazing. So I also worked at Tim Hortons around that same age. There's probably a good percentage of Canadians who worked at Tim Hortons as their first job. I would fall into that statistic, and I kind of love this as almost as a meme of like, I am really tired of these Tim Hortons employees. You know what I mean? All these Tim Hortons employees, they smell bad, they sound funny. But yeah, this is almost like we're seeing the birth of a Canadian style of racism here, you know, where it's like this woman is complaining about the service at Tim Hortons. She doesn't ever say Indian people, but it's basically cryptically, you know, that's kind of what the message is in a way. What else was he going to say? Oh yeah, you know, people. Actually, the comments are pretty. One of the comments, they won't even cut a bagel in half anymore. It's just a minimum wage job. Lower your expectations. Shut up. We need Karens, guys. We need Karens. Karens are good. You know, Karen is an anti-white slur. Because what is a Karen other than a white woman with high expectations? A sort of expectation of excellence. Sure, it's easy to make fun of them. Maybe like they're very needy. Oh my God, my drink's not right. But at the same time, hey, excellence. We want excellence in our society. We want something higher. We want to aspire for clean things, quality things, nice things. And the Karens are warriors for that. Shout outs to the Karens. Okay? Boycott Tim Hortons and Walmart. Yeah, I can't lie. My ice cap was straight liquid last week, and my exact thought was after spending $6 on a drink, I used to work at Tim Hortons, was damn, this place fell off. Welcome to New India. Why do they exclusively hire Indians, though? Meanwhile, Starbucks is pretty diverse. Something is off. It's the type of demographic they chose to hire. Interesting. These have like 4,000 likes, 1,700 likes. Why is there a heart next to this one? Oh, it's because I liked it. Boring. Anyway, let's listen to the rest of this.
And I send back the ice caps. I literally hand the tray back, and I said, those ice caps are literally liquid, not ice cap, and they're also not even filled. So why did I just spend over $4 on some ice caps for it not to be done right? Like, this is a customer service thing. Yes, it's just a drink at the end of the day, but I'm getting in my car. I'm going to drive to this establishment to get really crappy customer service and then not the proper drinks made. And then I have to drive back or just throw it out. And like, I just wasted my money, but you as a corporation gets to keep yours. That's crazy to me. So anyway, so I say to the 3 people sitting in the drive-through doing my order, I send it back. They send it back to me. I said, this is unacceptable. He literally gives it back and says, this is to policy. I said, what's your policy? He said, we can't do any more than that. Like, that's it. I said, this ice cap is liquid. It's not even it's not how it normally would be like that. For everybody knows what an ice cap is. I don't need to explain to Canadians watching this right now. And so he says to me, oh, it's policy. That's all I can do. My manager will get mad. I said, we've all worked at Tim Hortons at some point in our lives. And back in the day, this isn't how it was. And he goes, oh, you must have worked for a good manager then, because our manager doesn't allow to change anything with that ice cap. What does that even mean? I said, no. I said, customer service and the way things were done back in the day were done right. You know what he did? Laughed at me. You know what would have happened back in the day, even though I'm 31 years old? We would have gotten written up, a very large talking in the manager's office, and then you would have felt like an idiot because you made that person's day crappy. Now, I'm not one to hold that energy. I'm not going to. I'm actually letting it out right now on the camera. So then that way, Tim Hortons can hear this and the rest of Canada, because I know that people are going to want to hear this, and they all feel the same way. So why don't you guys all share in your comments your latest situations with Tim Hortons in Canada? I'd love to hear it myself. So he says to me, oh, it's
amazing. Love her energy. Love her confidence, too. I love her confidence, how she's like, I know everyone in the country feels the same way, okay? Imagine Pierre Poilievre had that confidence. That'd be epic. I would love to see that. Man, that was great. I was shout outs to her. Hey, I want to interview you. Let's get you on. Come on. Let's chat. Let's talk about it. This is going to happen more and more. And yeah, the huge reason why I want to focus on stopping Bill C-63, because I want to be like the lead blocker. I used to play football, right? And in football, you run the ball down the field, and you have like blockers who block the other people from tackling the person with the ball, right? And I think of Save Free Speech a lot like being the lead blocker, like taking away this legislation so Canadians like this can continue to just speak their mind. Because it is happening. Slowly but surely it is happening. But it's very true. There will be a terrible chilling effect if this bill were to pass. And it would make it so that the government would definitely make an example of someone like that. Just a regular 31-year-old mom who's upset with customer service. Just a regular quality Karen. Karen in a good way. And then they're going to get... written up. They're going to get sent to the principal's office, basically. That's another way to look at Bill C-63. It's like people are going to be tattling on each other for, like, I'm offended by this. Can I take her to human rights court? And, of course, it's absurd. Of course, it's crazy. But it's like, again, if you're trying to dismantle and ruin a country, it's like, yeah, you're going to try to push through this bill and justify it under protecting kids, right? And yeah, I guess I'll bring up this weird sort of this weird thing. Just I mentioned how it's going to be weaponized by tribes, by different groups. And this is from the Jerusalem Post. Hold on to your hats. Bo Teach's daughter receives, let me put me over here. Bo Teach's daughter receives disturbing non-kosher pizza delivery in Florida. FBI complaint file. This is over a pizza, a non-kosher pizza delivery. We're getting the FBI involved. This is in America. So there's a feud between Candace Owens and this Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. In a new development in the ongoing feud between Rabbi Shmuley Boteach and controversial conservative media figure Candace Owens, Boteach's daughter has filed a complaint with the FBI after receiving what she believes was a threatening message delivered in the form of a pizza to her home in Florida. So, a pizza delivery is a threat. That's where we're at. This is the son of Shmuley, or the daughter, rather. My father, Rabbi Shmuley, and I reported real Candace Owens to the FBI. I thought she would have learned her lesson already. Don't mess with the Jews. It's so, like, man, that's crazy. Being able to get away with saying that is so crazy. Imagine saying, don't mess with the whites. Like, that would... Like, the double standard is so crazy. Yeah. They talk about the pizza being delivered. The non-kosher pizza, which she did not order, was delivered with a receipt bearing her name and address, but with the phone number that belonged to her father, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. The pizza had not been paid for, raising immediate concern. Okay, hold on. That's in... They're not beating the stereotypes. Jerusalem Post, you are not helping with the stereotypes. The fact that this is a standalone sentence, the pizza had not been paid for, raising immediate concerns. Oh, come on. Come on. No, come on. Come on. No. The pizza had not been paid for, raising immediate concerns. Must resist. The email forwarded to multiple contacts, including her father, stated, "Today I received a pizza pie from Domino's, which I did not order. The receipt, which I have attached below, had my name and address on it, my parents' old home phone number. The pie had not been paid for. I called Domino's, and they told me that someone ordered it online. This was obviously a threat from someone online. My father and I have been receiving death threats all week on X. The fact that they used my name and home address combined with my father's home phone number shows this was a threat." You know, and it needs to kind of just be stated because, you know, for those who don't know, there was this thing called Section 13 for the Human Rights Tribunal in Canada. And essentially, this specific individual used this legislation to weaponize against specific people and to profit off of it. His name was Richard Warman, and he did this to his own personal benefit. Okay, this is also somebody who pretended to be other people online and create all this fake hate. And you know, there are examples of fake hate crimes. You could use Jussie Smollett as an example, where he pretended to be attacked by Trump MAGA hat supporters and having a noose tied around his neck and having bleach poured on him. It never happened. He made it up. There's another example of a fake hate crime where I think there was like a Jewish business who again pretended to like attack their own business, this is just despicable. Look, this is such an insane lie. I'm not saying that this stuff might not actually happen. However, in a situation like this, you can't rule it out. You can't rule out that that these people kind of ordered a pizza online to themselves and then said, "Hey, let's just pretend it was a threat to get a Jerusalem Post article written about us and to make it seem like we're in physical danger." Because that wins a lot of sympathy, and that sympathy is then used for more, I don't know. Look, threats amid anti-Semitic accusations. The address was my daughter's. Clear message. We know who you are and we know where you live. Right after Candace started threatening us. Threatening? Gonna have to fact check that. But yeah, I mean, if you can use a pizza delivery, I'm not saying this is what necessarily happened, but if potentially you could use a pizza delivery to justify that you are being threatened, then you can obviously use something like Bill C-63 to justify silencing people you don't like. And as I kind of said in the title, you know, tribes and groups are obviously going to weaponize. They would weaponize Bill C-63 if it passes to their own personal and political ends. You know, it'd be a nightmare. It'd be a nightmare. It'd be a horrible tattletale culture. That just would not be fun for anybody. Yeah. How are we doing? I think we're going to get into this Runkle video in a sec. Did I see a super chat? Did I miss a super chat? Yeah, Craig Bragg, $5. Thank you, Craig. Craig, you should look into going on Timcast IRL to spread the word. Tim, if you're watching, brother, we'd love to be on the show. Love Timcast. Let him know. Let him know that we're going to save free speech in Canada. Let him have me on. Art Story said, yeah, it was a cafe or something getting vandalized by the owner. Yeah, that's brutal. I'll have an extra large anti-Semitic pizza, please, says Catherine Grant. That's funny. Jussie is black, Jewish, and gay. The ultimate trifecta for faking hate crimes. Real. Very, very good point, NGD. But yeah, we got to stop Bill C-63. If you want to support, you can go to you can go to givesango.com/SaveFreeSpeech. That's where we're collecting donations to create the documentary, to promote the documentary. We got to get it out there. We got to spread the message. And yeah, we appreciate all of your support. It's a feelings bill, says Prairie. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. M. Ball says, how do you order pizza online without paying for it? It's a good question. Trent Dabbs says, what kind of pizza was it, though? Well, it was a non-kosher pizza. Non-kosher, non-paid for. This is a threat. This is assault. This is basically terrorism. This pizza order. You guys are funny. Okay. All right, let's get into this video. It's 15 minutes. 5-0. I think it'll go a lot quicker than last time. Yeah, let's just get into it, guys. How we looking? Okay. This is from Toronto's Sun, March 11th, so not long after the Bill C-63 was tabled earlier this year. The Online Harms Act could censor Twitter, Netflix, and us. Full comment podcast.
The Online Harms Act, also known as Bill C-63, it's the latest attempt by the Trudeau Liberals to try and deal with regulating the online world. Look, there's some good parts of this, parts that say they're going to deal with...
Look, there's some good parts of this. Yes, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Shall we? What's this guy's name again? I should know his name. I've seen him many times. I think he's blocked me on Twitter, actually. Has he blocked me on Twitter? Come on, what's his name? Guys, what can I think of his name? Toronto Sun. Guys, why can't I think of this guy's name right now? Anyway, maybe I shouldn't get so distracted. What is this? Brian Lilly, thank you. Thank you, Brian Everett. Okay, no, he doesn't have me blocked. That's good. But yeah, already giving the benefit of the doubt. You know, there's a lot of things online that we got to protect from. Just saying. Just saying. Great way to start it off. First thing you say about it is, hey, there's some good things about online protections.
With childhood online sexual exploitation. Nobody I know is in favor of that. There are portions to deal with revenge.
I would hope not. No one I know is in favor of that. Kind of weird you even have to say that, but yeah.
Porn. Well, again, I don't know anybody in favor of revenge porn, but are there elements of the bill that go too far? Will they infringe on freedom of expression? Will they lead to people abusing this for political means?
Yes.
Those are very real concerns. Yes. Hello, welcome to the Full Comment Podcast. My name's Brian Lilly, your host. And this week, we're going to take a deep dive into Bill C-63, the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's been a lot of commentary that this is a bill that should actually be cut in two. The online harms portions dealing with children, revenge porn, etc., put into one. And then all the elements that deal with regulating speech, hate speech, etc., even advocating genocide should be a separate bill and get longer, deeper, more thoughtful study. Is that the way to go? What are the portions that we need to worry about? Or do we have some of them taken out of context? Ian Runkle is a lawyer in Edmonton, criminal defense lawyer. He also has a very large following online with his YouTube channel, Runkle at the Bailey, where he talks about legal issues, especially firearms, on a regular basis.
I do want to say, when it comes to splitting the bill, one of the top comments here is the bill shouldn't be split. It should be thrown out. Absolutely. Throw the bill in the garbage with Trudeau and his whole party. Parents should be responsible for protecting children, not the government. So true. Yeah, I talked about this on the last stream, but we were responding to the CJA talking about Bill C-63, and they also kind of had a similar sentiment of, hey, we should just chop this bill in two and pass the one and not pass the other and talk about the other one more. And this is, again, a negotiation tactic to us to still lose ground and give the government more power. Like, it's not a win to only have part of this bill passed. That's still a loss. That's still a loss for us. That's still a big fat L. And that's probably what Pierre Poilievre is going for. Like, oh, well, we're going to just oppose the bad parts of the bill. Not the good parts. No. The so-called good parts are going to be just as bad. It's going to be giving the government control. They're going to be able to take down content. Anyway, we'll probably get into that. But again, we need to throw this whole thing out. This idea that some of it is good is just not good. Not a good framework. Not a good negotiating frame to be coming from. I would totally reject this frame. We need to say, hey, they're trying to kill free speech in Canada. The whole thing needs to be thrown out, period.
We reached out to Ian to discuss this issue and figure out what he sees as problems from a criminal defense point of view. Ian Runkle, thanks for the time.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So,
just got to say, this man looks so majestic. It's like he's got the flowing hair. I don't know what his background is. I'm sensing Irish or Scottish or Welsh or something, but very majestic guy.
Let me ask you off the top about the online harms bill. It seems to be two bills in one, in my view. You've got a whole area that's aimed at stopping child sexual exploitation, revenge porn, things like that. And then you've got hate speech, incitement to genocide, all these other things. Does this seem like they've kind of jammed a bunch of things together that the only thing they have in common is that they might happen online?
This is really, I think, sort of an omnibus bill of all of the things that happen online that we don't like, sort of wedged into one big thing. But it also will have some offline applications as well in terms of things like the abilities to get peace bonds applied to people who they think might do something.
Art Story says he knows Legolas. What elf? Question mark. Runkle is a real life elf, says Lee Stewie. Maybe. What do your elf's eyes see, Runkle?
Something might do something, which can include things like house arrest. So those provisions, it seems that they maybe should sever that off into a separate bill. But there's a lot of problems with this because the government really has this big idea that they can sort of tame the internet, and they're really bad at it.
I mean,
That's a good clip. That's a good clip. They think they can tame the internet. And this is the obvious stuff, too, that I think people can understand. Instead of just like going into the minutia of the bill, just look at Bill C-11, C-18 and be like, hey, this government already fucked up. You can't even get news on Meta, on Facebook and Instagram. You think they're going to do a good job with this? You're foolish. They have a bad track record, period. Why would we let them further legislate our internet when they've already messed it up twice?
tame the internet. I don't know what it's like in Edmonton, but we've had a dinner between two G7 leaders shut down because of pro-Hamas terror groups taking over the event venue. We've had a political fundraiser for local liberal constituency associations shut down because the same pro-Hamas terror groups show up and take over the restaurant in a very affluent, nice part of town. I'm not sure that you can police the internet when you can't police the streets.
Well,
that's very interesting that these are the only examples that Brian Lilly comes up with is pro-Hamas groups. Again, the whole thing of churches being burnt down, I just feel like never gets the sort of attention that it deserves. And along with the political prisoners that we've seen since the trucker convoy, is super relevant to the conversation of free speech. Okay, ones in chat if you think Brian Lilly or Ian Runkle will bring up either the trucker convoy or evidence of political prisoners in this country. 2, if you think the trucker convoy will not come up and the concept of political prisoners already existing in Canada will not come up in this 50-minute long conversation. One's in chat if you think it will come up, trucker convoy, political prisoners. 2's in chat if you think it will not come up in this conversation.
Well, a lot of the policing they plan to push onto social media organizations. And the problem is that in doing so, they're going to create tremendous costs for the social media organizations, both in terms of their internal moderation and processes, but also in terms of potential liability, fines if they're within Canada, as well as the possibility of inspections. And so what we might actually see is some of these companies fleeing Canada in order to take up residence elsewhere to avoid these particular rules.
Okay, so let's get into that in a little bit, but let's go back to...
This is a huge point, though. The Canadian government likes to act like they're so great and special and we're amazing. We're such an amazing country. Our population is relatively small. We're a relatively small market for a big tech company. When you have India, when you have America, India's over 1 billion, China's over 1 billion. And America is like a quarter, 1/3 of 1 billion, 300 million people. Canada is only like 30 or 40. It's like 40 million now. If they do the math of, you're going to want to have us to use all of these resources to try and silence people and all these resources to follow your directives, they might say, fuck you. We're not even going to let you use Facebook in Canada unless you have a VPN or something like this. And, that would never happen, bro. Again, this happened exactly with Bill C-18, with the Online News Act. Now you can't get news on Instagram and Facebook. So this concern that Runkle brought up off the bat is a totally valid one. Because there is a track record of poor legislation, terribly thought out legislation, already passed by this same heritage minister that, is an objective failure.
The first question that I asked you, and you kind of hinted at it in the first answer. Should this bill be split? Because on the question of...
This is the third time he's brought this up already. Third time he's brought up splitting the bill. Is this the plan, Mr. Lilly? Are you in on the plan that they want to try to split the bill and make one half look good or something like this? Jeez.
sexual exploitation of children online, on the question of revenge porn, things like that, I don't hear a lot of pushback. I don't hear a lot of, oh, no, we need to have that. There seems to be unanimous consent, unanimous viewpoint that these are things that we should be looking after. And to me, it seems like if you had that as a separate bill, that would pass very quickly versus all the other stuff that you and I are going to spend the next half hour or so unpacking. So should this bill be split?
It's certainly a good idea in terms of separating out, for instance, the Criminal Code and Human Rights Act stuff. The one thing I will say is anytime the government tells you we're here to protect the children, you should be very, very concerned because that's usually a sort of wrapper for very bad legislation. And I think that a lot of these portions that may very very well pass without too much criticism simply because they say this is to protect children are actually quite dangerous and quite charter infringing provisions.
Runkle crushing it right now. Big agree. We actually might just listen to that again because it was such gold.
Idea in terms of separating out, for instance, the Criminal Code and Human Rights Act stuff. The one thing I will say is anytime the government tells you we're here to protect the children, you should be very, very concerned because that's usually a sort of wrapper for very bad legislation. And I think that a lot of these portions that may very well pass without too much criticism simply because they say this is to protect children are actually quite dangerous and quite charter infringing provisions.
So
and some of them may actually
the child exploitation things. You're worried that there are
Brian Lilly cuts him off. He was cooking, gets cut off. Thanks, Lilly. Great.
Charter violations within that.
Absolutely. For instance,
unpack that for me.
For instance, one of the things that is forbidden to, or will be sort of forbidden, is any sort of visual representation that shows a child who's being subjected to cruel, inhuman, or degrading acts of physical violence, which would include, for instance, the movie Carrie. It's very difficult to craft these.
Look,
these restrictions.
The movie Carrie. There's going to be
I want to hear this again because, this is what we need. We need an autistic lawyer looking at this specific legislation and be like, you could totally do this to ban a movie from the 80s.
Children are actually quite or will be sort of forbidden. Since one of absolutely. For instance,
unpack that for me.
For instance, one of the things that is forbidden to, or will be sort of forbidden, is any sort of visual representation that shows a child who's being subjected to cruel, inhuman, or degrading acts of physical violence, which would include, for instance, the movie Carrie.
So I think his point there is, based on the verbiage in the legislation, is it could be a fictional movie, technically. Could be a TV show, technically. Could be like a sketch on YouTube or a short film on YouTube, technically. And that matters because it's stuff we're writing into law. So that kind of matters, especially if that exception is not accounted for.
It's very difficult to craft these.
Look,
these restrictions.
The movie Carrie, there's going to be an awful lot of people. I know the movie you're talking about. I watched it as a kid in the 70s. There's going to be an awful lot of people who have no idea what we're talking about. This is an old movie.
It's an old movie.
What is it about Carrie that would trigger this?
It's about a high school student who is very badly bullied by her peers, and it becomes a horror movie because, she's got magical powers, but it includes things like a scene quite famously where they trick her into a situation where they can dump pig's blood on her specifically for the purpose of degrading and humiliating her. There's a lot of high school movies that include these kinds of scenes of bullying and would be about children because it's high school students.
Yeah.
And so you can say, like, it's really, we don't want to have videos of child abuse out there, but there may actually, and the other thing is that there may be good reason to actually show even those. Somebody who sees somebody abusing a child in public may videotape that and put it online in order to condemn that behavior, and yet run afoul of this. So it becomes very difficult to say where the line is. And when they're sort of painting these broad strokes, they're going to get a lot of things wrong, and there's going to be a lot of situations where it may not be covered. Perhaps more contemporary, South Park.
He brings up a great point there with, and I brought this up on other streams, but what if there is a legitimate child abuser who gets caught in public or something or other, like where there's a clip of somebody like capturing this person being a vile monster? Technically, you could use this legislation to take that down. Like imagine, I'm not saying this is true, but imagine if hypothetically Justin Trudeau was friends with a child abuser, and there's like some scandalous like video that gets leaked, or somebody is able to capture of a horrible, monstrous thing happening to one of Trudeau's friends who's a monster abusing a child. Then you can just, hey, we'll just use that legislation bill to just take that content off the internet, and Trudeau's friend is innocent because there's no evidence, because we wiped it off the internet, because we have the power to do that now. We have the power to take things off the internet now that are on big tech platforms, because we'll threaten to like, what is it? Get 8% of their annual global profits, or $10 million. Think of the decision. If you're a big tech platform and the government, the Canadian government says, hey, if you don't take down this video, then you have to pay us $10 million, or however many $1 million it would be. Like, it's crazy. They probably will leave the country if they we'll probably just get no big tech platforms in Canada anymore if this bill passes. But let's just make sure it doesn't pass. How about that? Crazy concept, right? Lee Stewie said, one time I messaged Runkle for legal advice and he got back to me right away. Good guy. Did you message him on Twitter, Lee? I haven't reached out to him yet. I figured I'd watch this first just to kind of get his kind of best takes already on the bill to bring me up to speed with where he's at. Anyway. Art Story said the person sharing the video, like the child abuse video, would be guilty of prejudice or something. Yeah, I mean, you never know. You never know. He really, Runkles is really cooking there in terms of, like, they usually get it wrong. When it's so broad like this, there's so many little loopholes that could be exploited. This is the law. This is the law. This is important. It's important to get this right, because it's harder to uninstall a law once it's there. Let's throw the whole thing out. Let's see and what's interesting here too is, if I'm not mistaken, what Runkle is criticizing is the part that Lily thinks is more reasonable about, hey, let's just get rid of the criminal stuff and the human rights stuff, and let's just focus on the childhood sexual online harm stuff, which is, again, what the other podcast I listened to was saying. But he's pointing out the problems with that as well.
Oh my God, they killed Kenny.
Yes.
That's not allowable anymore.
South Park runs afoul of Bill C-63.
Potentially. I mean, there's exceptions there in terms of whether or not it has sufficient artistic merit, which, when South Park came out, was a hugely debated issue. I think that they've perhaps found some social traction, but what happens with all
I can
this?
see the argument for and against South Park having artistic merit. There are times when expression.
I hate when I do that. Here's the thing, though. What are we actually gaining from passing this bill? Because the assumption with all these conversations is like, well, we have to do something about online harms, and it's like, do we? What is truly the? Because all I'm seeing is a bunch of far leftists complaining about people's whose opinion they don't like. That's what I see mostly. And sure, there's the egregious things like pornography of abusing children. All of this stuff's already illegal, though. It's already against the law. Big tech already does a whole bunch of stuff to circumvent that. And I brought this up on another stream. If they were more serious about wanting to stop the monstrous stuff of abusing kids and recording it and putting it online, maybe they'd actually name names of large porn companies and actually hone in on that. They don't at all. They're just blanketing the entire internet. It's ridiculous. And for those who don't know, yeah, there's a massive porn company, Empire, that is headquartered originally, I believe, in Montreal. And it's like, if they were serious about like getting that content off the internet, then maybe they would actually mention this and actually gear this bill towards that. But obviously they aren't. I really believe it's much more about power grab. Crap, I lost the spot, didn't I? I think we were around here. You know, it's like, oh, this bill would even make South Park potentially illegal or content to be taken down. Yeah. Do we really need this bill that badly? What truly is the benefit other than patting ourselves on the back and acting like we're going to save kids from pedophiles? Pedophiles happen in real life, by the way. That's kind of really where. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. Let's keep going.
Exceptions there in terms of whether or not it has sufficient artistic merit, which when South Park came out was a hugely debated issue. I think that they've perhaps found some social traction, but what happens with all of this?
I can see the argument for and against South Park having artistic merit. There are times when it cracks me up and times where I cringe. And I think most of us are like that. And so, yeah, you could have that debate. You could have that argument. But depending on who's interpreting the law, you're essentially saying could result in, unforeseen instances of people being caught up in this.
Absolutely. And one of the things is that content that is actual like child sexual abuse material is already one of the most vilified and illegal sorts of things you can find online.
Yep. Exactly. It's refreshing to listen to Runkle because it's like all of the very obvious arguments like that. It's like he's one of the only people who I've heard kind of mention the most obvious stuff about this bill, and it's like it's just very refreshing. Appreciate you, Runkle.
Provider like social media and so forth, as a major category, polices the heck out of this and watches for that kind of content on their media and actively reports it to police. One thing that I hope they'll fix, because it's very concerning in this bill, is that this could actually make it very difficult to prosecute people who are sharing some of that content online.
In what way?
Wow.
There's a provision that if content gets a notice, essentially somebody says this content is objectionable, which hopefully somebody who saw that material would say this content is objectionable. The provider is required to, within 24 hours, provide a notice to the person who posted that content. And what are they going to do when they see, hey, your content was removed, we've noticed this, is they may start destroying evidence. The police will often engage in lengthier sting operations where they're watching to see where this material goes, who's sharing it, and then you'll see those big busts where they arrest like 100 people.
Okay.
What we may instead see is one person who gets a notice. That may go by the wayside
because of these notices.
Yeah, somebody who gets one of these notices is very likely to just say, whoa, I need to expect a police visit, and then
burn the
that
hard
information
drives
is lost.
and get rid of everything.
Yeah.
Sheesh. I've never heard this argument yet. That is crazy. So, I mean, it is kind of par for the course for the Liberal Party, right? We're going to help protect kids online. We're going to make it easier for pedophiles to get away with it as well. That's, wow. Big brain. Look how, I told you guys, look how big this man's brain is. So big. So big. He's 10 steps ahead. That's very chilling and disturbing, and he makes a fantastic point that I didn't think about. He's a criminal lawyer, so, he's right there. He's right on the ball, right on the money, making it easier for pedophiles to get away with it. Yeah. If you want to protect kids online, then you should be talking about this. Potentiality. Arif Virani? If you're saying that you want to protect kids online with Bill C-63, then this is something that you need to consider and clearly have not. Almost like you're full of shit and just want to usurp more power from big tech and for the Canadian government to control its own citizens and potentially protect your pedophile friends. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know who you hang out with, Arif. Jeez.
So, I mean, hopefully they'll put in some sort of exception of like, maybe we don't have to give people advance notice if they're sharing stuff that is that kind of harmful. Because I'd much rather see those people face an actual,
Is Lily starting to sweat? He's starting to sweat a lot suddenly. Am I crazy?
arrest and prosecution. It's absolutely we should be taking that material down, but prosecution's important. And if it can interfere with that, that's a problem.
You mentioned earlier that when people wrap themselves up in "we're protecting the children," we should be worried. And it reminded me of, correct me if I've got the bill wrong, Ian, Bill C-51, I think it was, in the Harper era. And there were a whole bunch of measures in that to try and deal with different elements that they wanted dealt with. But I believe it was then Justice Minister Vic Taves or Public Safety Minister Vic Taves saying, you're either with the child pornographers or you're with us. And it was a horrible bill. There were horrible elements to it. But he tried to wrap himself up in, I'm defending children. Why aren't you? It is kind of a thing that politicians will do. Politicians of all stripes. I'm not being partisan here. I'm picking on Vic Taves as well as worried about what the current government will do. Is this something that you worry about when you see those statements, when you see these bills, that they're just trying to hide other things?
I mean, I'm sure that there is some motivation of, we've got to protect the kids. The problem is that it's one of those things that's a real red flag. Almost every time you see it, there's something in those bills that is really a problem. And this bill has a lot of issues that may create real problems, where the various efforts to regulate the internet that we're seeing, including ones that are supported by the Conservative Party right now, the sort of porn ID law, have a real possibility of sort of creating a balkanized internet where Canada gets a lesser internet.
Hold on, though. Hold on.
Why? Let him cook, Brian. Oh, is he about to criticize the Conservative Party? Whoa. Hold on. Hold on there. We're here to shit on just Trudeau and the Liberals, okay? Okay.
Pierre Poilievre was asked, do you think that people should have to verify their age? That's vastly different than you've got to, scan your driver's license when you're going on a porn site. There's a whole lot of grades in there, and that was used by the Liberal Party just before they bring out this law to attack him. I mean, there's politics on all sides on this.
Oh, for sure.
Which kind of drives me nuts. It's like, we're going to stop the child pornographers, but don't ask anybody their age if they're uploading or watching on Pornhub.
Well, the concern there is not just that it's don't ask anybody their age. It's got to be verified by some means. So it may actually be that you have to post your ID or have a picture taken of you for various, there's technologies that purport to guess your age based on a picture. But that would also not just it covers any site that has, adult content on it, which isn't just Pornhub. It's also Twitter and Reddit. And at that point, if you're needing to have an ID for everything you do on places like Reddit and Twitter, then we've essentially created a digital ID, which is a real problem because that can very much suppress speech that might be legal but controversial.
Mm-hmm.
Rumble's cooking. I've heard this theory before that the the conservative bill is essentially presenting digital ID, and they're using the whole thing of, oh no, it's we're gonna make sure that you're old enough to watch illicit material online, and it's like, well, how do we do that if we're not just associating our identification with our internet browsing history, our presence online. So Runkle nails it here, and I'm very interested to see how Lilly is about to respond to this, because he's criticizing a bill that comes from the Conservative Party. I believe the bill is, what is it, 210 or something? Is it S210 or something like this? Can anyone find out for me? Maybe they'll bring it up in a sec.
And that becomes, that's my concern, is that it gets wrapped up as we need to protect children, but it instead is something that affects online discourse and speech, including legitimate lawful speech. So that's the concern. And there's plenty, I should note, all of the concerns that apply to that bill are wrapped up in C-63, in particular, because there's a section 65, and it just says, it's under this category of duty to protect children. It says, design features, an operator must integrate into a regulated service that it operates any design features respecting the protection of children, such as age-appropriate design, that are provided for by regulations. Those regulations won't come to a vote. They can just be, it's like the order in council to, ban firearms and so forth. They can just be put forward with a stroke of a pen. And they could say, you must have this kind of age verification tomorrow. Assuming that this law was in place, they could just drop that down. And suddenly all of these companies have to adjust to that. They could do worse than that. They could do more content.
I'm glad that you're raising that, because an awful lot of people don't realize how much in legislation is left to regulation. And regulation is not passed by Parliament. It's not seen by Parliament for the most part. It is decided by bureaucrats after the fact. And what you just described is something that would leave an awful lot of the details up to someone who is not elected, who we have no recourse with, who has no accountability, and they're going to decide how the law is applied, correct?
Absolutely. And typically what we see is a sort of ever-expanding sphere of what they feel should be their influence. Bureaucrats very rarely say, I should have less power and I should have less things under me, because the more things that they deal with, the more money and budget and so forth, and the more important they get to be. And so we can imagine that this is going to grow, not shrink. So that's a very big concern to me. And I mean, I want to see a healthy Canada economically. And one of the things that I think Canada does well is our sort of ground game on social media and on this kind of content. But it will be very difficult for these companies to consider locating themselves in Canada if they may have to completely change their system at the stroke of a pen by a bureaucrat. Why would you want to subject yourself to that when it might be literally millions of dollars in order to adjust these things? And then you might have to do it again in 6 months.
Wow, a lot of good points you brought up there. Last one basically saying big tech offices could possibly just leave the country if they don't like this sort of tyrannical rule being imposed over them by bureaucrats with their regulations. And I actually have not heard this one either, which is Section 65, I think it said, of the bill, where it essentially leaves the door open, the back door to additional regulations added by the bureaucrats on the Digital Safety Board or whatever we come up with, worried that it's going to grow and not shrink. Yeah. And this totally connects to, why this bill needs to be completely thrown out. Because if they get their foot in the door, if bureaucracy gets their foot in the door, if we give them the keys to the castle, the keys to starting to just regulate the internet how they like, even if it's just a small thing, it's going to grow. It's going to set a precedent to do more of that, to control more of the internet. It's good. Not good. Not good. Yeah, Runkle is awesome. Totally agree, Sandy Klein. Totally agree. Alberta Climber. Ian Runkle is a good dude. He offered to consult with Chris Lysak's lawyer on all firearms related issues for free. Chad moment. What did I tell you from the beginning? Look at the Look at the mystique. Look at the aura. The aura is real. Yeah, Lee Stewie. Parents should be monitoring their children on the internet, not the government. Yeah, it's true. And again, the problem is, I brought this up on an earlier conversation. It's a genuine fear for parents. It's a genuine fear having your kid on the internet, having your kid on a device. Oh my God, like there's so much scary stuff out there. What are we gonna do? And then you can see Justin Trudeau. Don't you worry. We're going to protect your kids from online harms with this new Bill C-63. Really, I'm going to be protecting my pedophile friends, but just pass the bill anyway because you want to feel safe with your children online. But parents are legitimately afraid. And giving that Trojan horse with this bill of like protecting kids, it's easy. It's an easy sell to help lull Canadian parents asleep and be like, you know what? We do need something online. We do need something online. So yeah, that Trojan horse needs to be completely dismantled by exposing what this bill is really about. And that's what we're doing at SaveFreeSpeech.ca. We're stopping Bill C-63. If you want to support us, you can go to givesendgo.com/SaveFreeSpeech. It's in the pinned comment. This is going towards the documentary we are creating. And it is going to expose the truth about Bill C-63, the people behind it, the intentions of tyranny, of censorship, of creating more political prisoners, silencing political opposition. Again, givesendgo.com/SaveFreeSpeech. You can send us a donation there. Greatly appreciate it. But let's get back to this conversation.
You know, I've talked to people who are either in these major tech companies or represent them. And as you know, my industry, my company, they've had a lot of issues with big tech.
Foghale says, give them an inch and they will throw you in prison for 20 years. Yeah, real. The regular phrase is give them an inch, they take a mile. But yeah, give them an inch and they will throw you in prison for 20 years. Like it's, yeah, exactly. Yep.
And the whole argument over what percentage of ad dollars go to Google and Facebook versus everyone else. They're still major players and we're still partners with them. And they're part of the internet economy, as you say. And yet this government keeps coming up with bills that make it harder and harder for them to operate. And yet there are conversations about, should we leave? Should we withdraw certain services from Canada? Should we scale back in Canada? Which is really bothersome when you think about how much all of us rely on, whether it's storage services, email services, social media services, all of these things that are part of the economy that we wouldn't have thought of 15 or 20 years ago. They're there now. We're going to add these regulations on, and that might lead to some of them saying, you know what? We don't need Canada because they don't want us.
And it is a very real concern. And at those points, we end up with situations where these companies do flee, and then we can't regulate them at all. The other thing that we may see with some of these bills is if you prevent people from doing things legally, they may move things into illegal. You know, there may be a growth in illegal distribution channels, which have very few breaks. And so we may actually end up making our internet worse by driving out the people who are sort of the good actors and only creating ones that have no interest in following any laws whatsoever.
You're talking about the dark web.
Those sorts of things. Like if we chase out, pornography is controversial, but we're not going to get it to go away. And so, for instance, if we drive out companies that try their best to make sure that things are not too toxic, what you'll instead see is a massive growth of people seeking out that content on other sources, which may not follow rules at all. And that's going to be a major concern I have with some of these bills as well. And when you look at just the legal exposure of operating in Canada, right now, I'm not sure what the global revenue is for Twitter right now. I'm just looking. Is it in millions? Like if the sorry, I shouldn't be Googling right now, but it's 8%. The fines allowed for penalties are up to 8% of the operator's global revenue, or 25 million. Yeah, or 25 million, whichever is greater. So if you're talking about a company like Facebook or...
Wow. Whichever is greater? That's so obnoxiously written. You need to give us as much money as you have, the most amount of money. If we find something bad, if you don't take the bad thing away that we deem bad, then we're going to fine you $25 million. That's insane. I thought it was lower than that. Whichever's higher? 8% of global profits. That is... And cut to the clip of Arif Virani saying, like, we took years developing this legislation. Really? Because this sounds ridiculous. And everybody who's actually involved with who this legislation would affect, i.e. the big tech companies, i.e. the people who use the internet every day, they think it's absurd and terrible. It's almost like you were only consulting with the people interested in silencing political opposition in this country. It sounds like that's like the only people you consulted with, Arif Virani. Potentially. I don't know. Just a theory.
For Google, Google's maximum fine for violating this is $1 billion.
See you, Google. See you next time. Not going to have Google in Canada anymore. $1 billion. $1 billion. If you don't take down this meme, this evil meme, we're going to, yeah. I mean, he nailed it a second ago where he said, if you're a big tech company and you consider the exposure, the legal exposure of operating in Canada, where the Canadian government might somehow force you to get $1 billion. Yeah. Peace out, Canada. They would not think twice.
Yeah. If I'm Google, I'm starting.
You might say, you know what? I don't need to sell Brian his Google Drive account anymore. I don't need to sell the storage and all the other services that various people buy. I'm gonna decamp. I'm gonna leave.
And so we may actually see measures to just say, listen, as a market, in terms of our money, Canada isn't the big player. We're basically the equivalent of the kid who goes to the grocery store once a week to buy a candy bar out of his allowance. And so when we say, listen, if you want to play in our sandbox, you have to follow all of these rules, they may say, we're just happy to block Canadians. And if we start getting blocked off of things like Netflix or, Reddit or Twitter, we end up with this world where as Canadians, we have a lot less access to the net. And that's becoming a very real possibility. Some of these bills, not C-63, C-63 purports to give orders to take specific content online.
But you've also got C-11, C-18, and so on.
Yeah, and some of those include provisions to say that that websites have to be blocked if they don't comply. If you don't have enough Canadian content and you're not willing to play ball, then we can block you from Canada. And that's a problem if you're looking at things like, the BBC. We're never going to convince the BBC to put Canadian content on because that's not what they do. They're the British Broadcasting Corporation. All of these are very, serious concerns. And to sort of tie that back to Bill C-63, when we start saying, listen, if you want to operate in Canada, we've got all of these rules and, $1 billion fines. It's easy to just say, you know what, we're going to decamp. Canada, you do what you want to do. We're just going to operate from, yeah.
So we've talked about the issues surrounding things like the child exploitation, the revenge porn side of things on Bill C-63, but there's a whole other element.
I just do want to say that those were a couple of great points he brought up. And I forgot about that, actually, for the absurdity of Bill C-11, that they could, in theory, block foreign news sites because they're not Canadian enough. I'm going to have to review the absurdity of Bill C-11 because that'll be part of the same talking point of just how much of a legislative failure these other internet bills have been. So again, why would we keep letting them pass bills if what they've been passing is just total trash? And it opens up the internet, or I guess the public, to facing the consequences of just really, I want to say the R word, retarded bureaucrats. But yeah, like just like horribly misguided decisions by bureaucrats who are trying to control the internet. Anyway.
And this is the one that most critics are saying, huge impact on freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Also, Ian, let me start here. I wrote a column when it first came out, my first read through. And of course, these are big bills and it takes a few days to digest and really understand, because what people don't understand when you get a piece of legislation like this is folks like you and I have to spend our time going back and forth between the existing law and what's there, because you'll get this section that says, and we replace this section with this. And you're like, well, what did it say before? And you got to go back and forth, and it's dizzying at times. And so it takes a long time for us to break it out. But my first read on this was, this is not a serious bill for dealing with what are absolutely issues that folks want dealt with. But when you have a bill that says you're going to get, let me read this to you, potentially up to life in jail for either advocating genocide, or, let me read this part, everyone who commits an offense under this act or any other act of parliament, if the commission of the offense is motivated by hatred based on race, national or ethnic origin, language, color, religion, sex, age, mental or physical disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity or expression, is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for life. We don't put people in prison for life for murder.
Now, I think it's worth noting, well, nobody's actually going to get a life sentence for most of these things, right? It's a maximum penalty. It's not going to be the average penalty, but it is going to be very interesting because this could cover some very minor offenses overall. One of the offenses that people commit that might trigger this
Lily was cooking there. He was actually cooking there.
Is mischief. Somebody spray paints on,
mischief. Let's see if they connect this with the trucker convoy, where a lot of people who got charged were charged with mischief or inciting to commit mischief. Anyway.
A religious building, something hateful to that religion. Well, okay, that's a detestable crime, but it's spray paint, right, at the end of the day. And so it'll be like, okay, you're facing months in prison as a maximum for
up
spray
to life.
painting, but life because of what you spray painted. And what that'll end up meaning is you might end up with a jury trial over a spray painting because you're going to have certain rights, but also any other act of parliament could be really, really interesting. For instance, out on the East Coast, we're seeing disputes over fisheries. And so if they say, well, you decided to fish lobster out of season in order to, because you dislike these other groups, then now you're facing a life sentence. It's like, what?
And for people that don't follow this issue, I follow it on the, just gently. You're right. That could happen. Someone could say this is a hate crime.
Yeah.
I think they're talking about the fisheries on the East Coast, if I'm not mistaken. There's a dispute, but I don't know why they're not actually saying what's actually happening out there. Probably because it has to do with native groups. But if I'm not mistaken, native groups have the privilege of fishing outside of season because of their native status, like indigenous, whatever it is, First Nations, I don't know. But because they have that status, they are able to, fish certain species outside of the season, which can really mess up the ecosystem and mess up the kind of regular cycle of whatever fish it is there or lobster that they're taking or trapping. And yeah, they're saying that like that whole dispute could be now colored by this hate legislation because, people of different skin colors is involved.
And I mean, the courts are usually reluctant to find something as a hate crime, because a lot of the time when people say something is a hate crime, it's more somebody with mental illness. But
oh man, I love Runkle. That is so funny. My professional lawyer opinion is when someone's complaining about a hate crime, usually someone's just mentally ill. That's usually the case. This is just what I've seen. I'm a professional, so I am a lawyer.
There is this real possibility that you'll get people facing where the very serious charge is this enhancement. And the other thing that happens is you get people who get into a dispute and they get angry and they say something offensive specifically to upset the person that they're angry with. And it might be something that they wouldn't otherwise say. Maybe they've been punched a couple of times in the face before they get to saying something like that. But now they've gone from like, we're having a bar fight to I'm on the hook for like, there's a maximum of life, even if they're not actually likely to get a life sentence.
And look,
it's still silly. It's still silly. Like I brought this up earlier. What's the benefits? What are the good things of this bill? What are the good? I'm not seeing any. I'm just seeing so many excuses to be able to throw more people in jail whose opinion we don't like. Like the more I research, the more I do research on this bill, the more I see nothing good, very few things good. Anything that it might actually help with are already things that big tech silences and censors and takes off their platforms anyway, or are things that are already objectively illegal in this country, like the child porn stuff. So all the good parts are things that are already reduced by big tech, a very well dialed in professional trans international companies that have their shit together, probably hundreds of employees at each big tech company dedicated to online harms already. Or the good thing about the bill is that we're going to stop something that's already illegal. Other than that, the only sort of benefit, like the things that this bill is adding is just like, it's just problems on problems on problems on problems, loopholes to attach charges to this person or that person based on something they said. It's a bunch of political correct nonsense that will be used to persecute dissidents, persecute people who have the wrong opinion. Obviously, like we've seen this already happen. The police are showing up at people's doors for things they're saying on social media, and it's always a thing that is kind of politically charged, or it's anti-immigrant or whatever. It's totally legal to say that. It's legal to criticize things in this country. And police are already showing up at people's doors. They're obviously trying to take away our freedom of speech with this bill because, again, like I just said, there's no benefits. There's no real benefits other than a whole bunch of loopholes for bureaucrats to use to persecute people they don't like because of their politics.
I'm not against tough sentences. I'm a tough sentence kind of guy. It just seems like compared to where this current government is on other issues, getting rid of a mandatory minimum for your third conviction of gun smuggling under C5, reducing sentences for all kinds of other crimes, and then they come out with this. And I think there's 4 instances where they've moved the maximum sentence up from 2 years to 5 years to show that they're really, really serious about this. To me, this side of the bill seems like it's performative, that it is for show rather than being a serious legal attempt to deal with real problems.
And I think that we're going to see a lot of situations where, nobody's actually going to get life. It's the maximum on this. The minimum is nothing, but it's a straight indictable offense, which means that they can't go by summary conviction. It cuts off certain options in terms of sentencing.
We've got summary convictions for terrorism offenses. You hide a terrorist, you can get a summary conviction, which means if it isn't spelled out in the legislation, it's a maximum of 6 months in court or in jail. Am I correct?
I'd have to check. I sadly don't have all of the sentencing memorized. I always check,
but if it isn't spelled out in legislation, a summary conviction, you're not going to jail for more than 6 months, right?
I think they upped it to 18.
Okay. So, but
yeah, it's
like you've got summary convictions for things related to terrorism, and you don't have summary convictions here. As you say, it could be spray paint.
And it's
detestable,
one of the things,
yes, but life?
This may actually discourage the laying of these charges. And sort of, if I'm a prosecutor, let's say you've got a guy who has spray painted he spray painted a shed somewhere, and he basically says, like, whatever. Now I'm considering whether I want to lay this charge. Well, if I lay this charge, now this person, because they're liable to imprisonment for life, has an entitlement to things like a jury trial. And do I really want to run that on a shed spray painting? I might say, well, no, I don't. I'm going to just leave that out. And so that also becomes a concern. The other thing...
And then people who are upset at the offense, and rightly so, say, well, why aren't you giving them the full charges? and then it's like, they lose faith in the justice system because they say, well, but you could be charging them with more, and you're not. So you're not taking this seriously. And like, let's say it's a religious place of worship, as you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
If your church, your synagogue, your mosque is attacked, that is very personal, is very visceral for you. And you're going to want someone to face full consequences. But because this bill goes so far, you're saying there's a good chance prosecutors will just, let's leave that aside. And then you've got the public feeling like the prosecutors aren't taking it seriously.
And what they really...
What? I mean, that's like, fast forward to when this bill's passed, and it's like, what? You didn't give them life in prison for spray painting the synagogue? Like, that's crazy that he just went there with that, because it's like, where I thought he was going is, although sure it's a hateful thing that was done, maybe just charge them for the actual crime of vandalism and call it a day. We already have laws against this stuff. They broke the law, and just deal with the regular law that we already have. But instead it was the mob mentality of these different tribes wanting, no, we want to charge them even more. Why don't we throw them in jail because of this? It's weird how he just kind of glossed over that as if it's, he basically said, it's going to add people to be more tribal and like be more bloodthirsty of wanting to charge them more. Like, can we talk about how that would be a massive problem, Brian Lilly, in terms of, people wanting to weaponize this bill against one another? Hopefully that comes up. He just kind of presumed all that was going to happen.
Really ought to be doing on this, I think, is splitting it into, there should be a summary conviction option for this, for those situations that are less serious. I can certainly see...
Why are we assuming that this is like again, why are we assuming that this legislation is like worthy of being saved or corrected? That's what I don't get. Because, Runkle, are you not sort of promoting the idea that we should be moving the line of what's criminal to start to involve speech more? To me, I feel like this is a horrible precedent to be setting. Why is it valid at all? What are the redeeming qualities at all of any of this?
Situations where it might be really, really serious. If you've got somebody, they've got the swastika tattoo on their forehead, they go to a synagogue, they barricade the doors, and they set it on fire while everyone is inside. I mean, first of all, they'd be looking at life imprisonment anyway. But...
Well, exactly. Exactly. So why do we need extra charges if that's the case? Identify the individual criminal for their individual crime. That would be...
I still think, that's a situation where you're like, okay, that's where we want to take it up to a life imprisonment maximum. Mm-hmm. But we don't necessarily want to do this over somebody who, at a bus stop throws an empty coffee cup. Like, is this really the same category? Do we need a life imprisonment, like, maximum? Does it have to be that indictable offense that triggers all of these protections? Or should maybe the Crown be able to say, we're going to proceed summarily in this case because, while it might be, might be more serious, but we still don't need to go that far. Life doesn't have to be on the table for this one.
I want to hear your thoughts on what some...
All right, I need to quickly run to the little boy's room, but I wanted to throw something up on screen. You guys will probably hate it. Just give me a sec here. Do. How long is this? I don't even know how long it is. Uh-oh. I saw this video come across my feed today, so we're gonna watch it together. Well, actually, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, but you guys can watch this.
Cities with the most Indian population. Number 1, you got Toronto, Ontario. Toronto has the largest Indo-Canadian population in Canada. Most Indo-Canadians in Toronto, they live around Brampton, Markham, Scarborough, Etobicoke, and Mississauga, but mainly Brampton. Number 2, Vancouver, British Columbia. Vancouver is home to the second largest Indo-Canadian population in Canada, with a significant presence in Surrey, Burnaby, Richmond, Abbotsford, and Delta. Number 3, you got Calgary, Alberta. Calgary has a growing Indo-Canadian community, primarily in the northeastern and eastern parts of the city. Number 4, you got Edmonton, Alberta. Edmonton also has a significant Indo-Canadian population, mainly concentrated in the southeastern and northern areas. Montreal, Quebec. Montreal has a sizable Indo-Canadian community, with many residents living in the neighborhoods of Park Extension, Côte des Neiges, and La Salle. These cities have become hubs for the Indo-Canadian community due to their diverse economies, educational opportunities, and vibrant multicultural environments. Top 5 Canadian cities with the most Indian population. Number 1, you got Toronto, Ontario. Toronto has the largest Indo-Canadian population in Canada. Most Indo-Canadians in Toronto, they live around Brampton, Markham, Scarborough, Etobicoke, and Mississauga, but mainly Brampton. Number 2, Vancouver, British Columbia. Vancouver is home to the second largest Indo-Canadian population in Canada, with a significant presence in Surrey, Burnaby, Richmond, Abbotsford, and Delta. Number 3, you got Calgary, Alberta. Calgary has a growing Indo-Canadian community, primarily in the northeastern and eastern parts of the city. Number 4, you got Edmonton, Alberta. Edmonton also has a significant Indo-Canadian population, mainly concentrated in the southeastern and northern areas. Montreal, Quebec. Montreal has a sizable Indo-Canadian community, with many residents living in the neighborhoods of Park Extension, Côte des Neiges, and La Salle. These cities have become hubs for the Indo-Canadian community due to their diverse economies, educational opportunities, and vibrant multicultural environments. Top 5 Canadian cities with the most Indian population. Number 1, top 5 Canadian cities with the most
Oh my god. Wow. Wasn't that great? Isn't that great news, guys? It's amazing. Don't complain. Hey, if you send the wrong comment, if you make the wrong comment in the comment section of that video, you might go to jail. Okay? People might show up at your home. You might be put on house arrest. Actually, if we think that you might write the wrong comment, commit a hate speech crime, we actually might put you on house arrest anyway. Yeah. I'm sorry to put you guys through that, but I needed to go to the bathroom and... Oh my god, I played twice. I'm so sorry, guys. I apologize. I'm back. We're back. What's all these poop emojis doing here? What are you guys implying? Fatquin Google says Greg needs some trailer park piss jugs. That's gross. That's really funny though. That could probably be a hook. Should that be a hook for my streams, that I have piss jugs and I'll just be here on camera while I'm going? Ugh. Is that what you guys want to see? I don't know if that would be good content. That sounds kind of disturbing. These Indians have to go back to Indiana. Totally agree, man. They all came from Indiana. Okay, we've been going for about 2 hours. So let's get through this reaction. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. Take us to the piss jugs. No piss jugs, okay?
Have, in my view, unfairly characterized as thought crimes. Look, I don't like the portions of the bill related to the peace bond for fear of committing a hate crime.
Yeah.
Not my favorite part of the bill, but it's not. First off, The Harper government put this in, and maybe you would know if it's ever been challenged. The Harper government put this in one of their last bills in 2015 for fear of committing terrorism. And it's still on the books. So if it's been challenged, it hasn't been successfully challenged. But there is a requirement that if you're going to try and have someone get a peace bond for fear that they will commit a hate crime, you've got to get the Attorney General involved. That's a pretty high bar.
Yeah.
Then you've got to take it to a judge and present the evidence. That's a pretty high bar. There are at least checks and balances on that there aren't in other provisions of this bill, like the Section 13 that we can get into in a moment. I still don't like it, but do you think that sort of thing would face a challenge or would successfully survive a challenge? Has this sort of thing been challenged before, this fear of a crime? I mean, that just leaves me feeling uneasy that you're going to get something for fear of a crime.
The thing is that they have to actually bring evidence to say that fear is reasonable and is supported. So they can't simply, I don't think that they'd be able to get this on the basis of you have posted online and you dislike a particular group.
Really? You think? You simply just think. Nah, they would never do that. That would never happen, bro. That would never happen, bro. I disagree with you there, Runkle. I don't think, trucker convoy has not come up. The different political prisoners in this country have not come up where they have used existing laws to persecute people who have the wrong opinion. You have Archer Pawlowski, who got charged with, destroying infrastructure for simply delivering a sermon at a protest. You have Jeremy McKenzie picking up a whole slew of charges, all of which have been dropped or stayed, and he's a completely innocent man. He was one of probably the most outspoken dissident in the country, criticizing, humiliating the RCMP multiple times. But they found a way. They found a way to make him look like a villain based on a bunch of bullshit. You don't think they would use this new legislation to go after dissidents in any way that they can? Respectfully, Runkle, this is the most naive that I've seen you here. Maybe you're not aware of the different political prisoners, or maybe you don't know the whole story. Maybe you're not as cynical as me. But, they would never use this legislation to just, without evidence. And that's what I find so scary, that they're even entertaining this. Oh, no, don't worry, bro. They need evidence. They need to make evidence and make a case and make an argument. They've made all sorts of arguments about people they don't like. They've said that people are far right and they're evil and they want to kill us all and they're inherently racist and all this stuff. It would not even be that hard to make the argument. And it comes down to the bias attorney general to give the go ahead. None of this is making me feel good at all.
Has this sort of thing been challenged before, this fear of a crime? I mean, that just leaves me feeling uneasy that you're going to get something for fear of a crime.
The thing is that they have to actually bring evidence to say that fear is reasonable and is supported. So they can't.
The fear, Runkle, is this not, we're getting into the emotions now of hey, is your fear valid? Is that a valid fear? When has fear, actually, maybe fear does probably come up in the law, because when it comes to feeling threatened, you need to be fearful. But, so maybe there is a legal precedence for fear. Anyway, let's keep going.
Simply
Liquid Zoo. Oh, Greg, please talk to him. Would love to talk to Runkle. He sounds like a friendly guy. Yeah, would definitely love to, after watching this, I'll get his take, and I definitely want to ask him some tough questions about the bill, hypotheticals.
I don't think that they'd be able to get this on the basis of you have posted online and you dislike a particular group. It would have to be something a little more serious than that, because if they start using it to just police speech, then they're going to run into serious charter issues. But
when has that stopped people in the past? We had the whole mandates, the mandates for injections, which ended in the trucker convoy. That violated our charter rights, did it not? No one cared about the charter then. You know, this idea that the charter still means something is crazy to me.
We do actually have a number of these provisions that allow for.
And the thing is like, it's sure there's people putting forth court challenges right now using the charter as a precedent to, like, you know, like fine the government or whatever it is. But that's not straightforward. That's not easy. That costs a lot of money, and you're up against the government who has like infinite funds to defend themselves. Like, that's not as, like, you know, they could still use, turn it up a bit. Sorry, I'll put my face closer to the microphone. Having this legislation in place would allow the government to pick on people they don't like and drag them through, accusing them of a future hate crime. And then what, Runkle, you're saying that, oh, but then they could like sue the government after the fact. Yeah, after their lives have been destroyed for doing nothing, just because someone had a fear that they were going to do something. Like, we're totally skimming over like the insane implications of this.
For instance, a peace bond, if it looks like you're going to get into a fight with somebody. You may never have done so, but they do sometimes impose peace bonds, for instance, when like two neighbors can't get along and they keep getting into situations, but they do need evidence for that. And I don't think we're going to see this used a lot. I think we're
assuming it's going to pass. I don't think we're going to see this used a lot. Why do we need it? Why do we need to have it? Why would we want to have a pre-crime bill? It's literally a thought crime bill. When you have a big enough fear something's going to happen, then you get to charge somebody. Crazy.
I suspect we'll see this used actually in situations where people have already committed some sort of hate propaganda offense or hate crime, but it
hate propaganda offense. Jeez.
Might be difficult for them to lay out the full proof, or where the circumstances might be such that.
So let me give you an example and tell me if I'm on the right track, wrong track. I'm some yahoo, some jerk who every weekend goes out to a church, a synagogue, a mosque, temple, what have you. And I'm always outside with the really nasty slogans. I'm screaming in everyone's face.
He's talking about, pro-Palestine or Hamas supporters, probably. Hypothetically, but I think he's kind of, anyway.
Every weekend. Could they eventually just say, you know what? We think he's going to keep coming back. We need to do something. Is that where this provision would come in, or is it for something else?
Now, the thing is, they could probably already use provisions, like just the existing peace bond provisions, depending on what it is that you're saying.
Which seems like is a real issue with this bill, is that there's a lot of it where there's already provisions in the law.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is that they could put like an electronic monitoring device on you, which that is concerning to me because those are actually incredibly expensive, and you pay for that if they impose it on you. Normally you see those on like bail conditions where somebody's like, I will agree to pay for this because otherwise the alternative is that I will not be let out. I'm concerned that they may put these conditions on people and then like, we've imposed it on you and you have to pay for it. That might be very concerning.
And so if you can't pay.
Why is that the most concerning part, that you have to pay for it? What? Why is having to pay for it the most concerning part? Not the part about, hey, we made an argument that we're afraid of you, what you might do in the future. But then he had to pay for his own ankle monitor. What injustice?
Pay for it, you've got to stay in jail.
Well, they can't really jail you on this because it's a peace bond. It's just like, are people going to end up with these debts that can then be enforced? I'm not sure how that's going to end up working. But the standards for this, I think, are going to actually be fairly high. It has to be reasonable ground.
Again, you think it's going to be reasonably high. What if everyone involved in the decision-making process is totally biased for political reasons against the person who, whatever argument is being made, the person who might commit a hate crime in the future? Because you can just look at the scenario of the trucker convoy with Jeremy McKenzie or Artur Bawlowski or any other of these political dissidents and see how this law would obviously be used against them. Obviously. And they would work around the clock to make an argument to get them locked up or monitored with an ankle monitor or what have you. Just extra legislation to pile on. Because we already saw them pile on legislation to all these people who opposed the government agenda during COVID. We already saw them pile on all sorts of trumped up charges. And the fact that they're not bringing up this angle to this bill of, hey, remember political prisoners? Remember political dissidents? Remember how the government has an agenda to specifically pick on specific people? The fact that they're not covering this angle is very, very disappointing. Anyway.
For the fear. And usually where you, like, the main use that you actually see of peace bonds is situations where somebody has already been charged with a criminal offense and it gets sort of pled down, even though a peace bond isn't really a plea. So you'll see situations where, like, two guys get into a bar fight, and instead of saddling them with a criminal record, they'll say, how about you just go on a peace bond and stay away from that dude, maybe get some treatment.
You can't both be at Billy's bar on Friday, and you got to stay away from each other.
Exactly. So here you may see situations where somebody has already committed or likely committed a hate propaganda offense or a hate crime. And instead of going through that full prosecution, you may see them imposing this as a step down. Okay. And so it's like, rather than proceeding with charges, I think that'll be the main use that you see for this, is somebody who's already committed it.
Ian, you are fairly.
I don't know. This all feels like it's like all the hypotheticals they're talking about seems to exist in a world where the government is completely not malicious at all, completely not ruling with an iron fist at all. Like, the trucker convoy never happened. There's no evidence of political prisoners. No, it's just going to be, how is this going to affect citizens? How will they use this bill or that bill? There's nothing wrong with the government whatsoever. I don't know. It just seems like a very sort of innocent worldview that they're looking at this from, as if it's just citizens who are going to be, accusing other citizens without any sort of political bias, any sort of political agenda at play. It's not part of the larger picture whatsoever. I mean, it would be really interesting actually to hear Runkle's opinion on this bill since everything that's happening in the UK. That's actually a really good place to start from.
Robust in defending civil liberties.
You would never be charged for criticizing a group of people complaining about immigrants in the UK literally getting thrown in jail right now and charged constantly. That would never happen here, though.
And you seem to be saying, could be some problems with this, but don't worry too much about this section.
This isn't the part that actually worries me the most.
So what does that?
It's largely the material about what they can take off.
Sorry, real quick. It doesn't worry you the most, but still, as a lawyer, as someone who follows legislation and law very closely, what is like this part? What has existed that is similar to this part of the legislation where, hey, if we make the argument that we're afraid enough that somebody might do something in the future, then we're going to persecute them? When has this ever happened in history? Like anywhere? I don't know that much about the law and the history of law, but again, I feel like they're kind of just glossing over this part. They're saying, yeah, no, if you can make the argument that you think someone's going to do something bad in the future, then yeah, we should be able to. Oh, they haven't committed a crime yet? Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of the examples that they use, they're just their example. Like, I feel like they're really not. There's a naivete in the air in this conversation, especially when you're not considering the evidence of political prisoners in Canada since 2022
offline, and what they can
rewind it a bit.
The material about what
most replayed parts coming up.
Most.
So what does that?
It's largely the material about what they can take offline and what they can one of the concerns I have is actually with the intimate images, the revenge porn aspect of things. And I think that is way too broad. It's very, and I mean, this is one of those things where everyone is like, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be sharing.
I don't know anyone in favor of revenge porn.
Except that you will actually, if you frame the question right, find everyone in favor of revenge porn.
Okay, so
what do you think of the Sistine Chapel?
Beautiful piece of art.
Beautiful piece of art. And it's actually revenge porn, believe it or not. At least portion of it. One of the Pope's sort of figures was criticizing the painting of it because he felt that there were too many nudes on it. And so Michelangelo, as a bit of a sort of a, take this, amended one of the figures to put that guy's face on it and then depicted that person being bitten south of the equator by a snake. And that's permanently on there. It's a nude figure. And that was specifically done as a screw this guy. And it's one that now persists throughout history. But it's also a great work of art. Is this going to be something that we go, and we know that this person gave no consent to this. There's actually a lengthy history of using nudity in political commentary, depicting your political opponents as nude, typically in unflattering ways. We've seen this with Trump, for instance. There's lots of people who have depicted Trump sort of
having a small penis. Obama made a comment about Trump having a small penis, I think the other night at the DNC, the Democratic National Convention.
In the nude and sort of de-emphasize certain body parts. Well, Trump has not given his consent to that. But it also is very broad. It is, if it is reasonable to suspect that the person had a reasonable expectation of privacy and the person does not consent to the recording being communicated. Well, reasonable to suspect is a very, very low standard. And it doesn't mean that there's no sort of proof required. And so, for example, if there is any artificially created image that depicts somebody in the nude, how do you know, as if you're the provider, how do you know who this person is? There's no requirement to track this person down. And so if somebody creates an image of nobody who actually exists, it's just an image of something that looks like a person, but is not actually duplicating a person.
And with AI right now, and the images coming out.
Yep. Then they would have to take that down, notwithstanding the fact that there is no actual person who looks like that, because the organization doesn't know. They would say it's reasonable to suspect that this is a person. And so we get into this real thing of policing content, and all of this stuff, basically, they have to respond within 24 hours when they get a notice. And so we may see a lot of situations where people are flagging content and it has to be taken down because there's no way that they can determine that it's not actually, intimate content communicated without consent. And that may also apply to things that are not even pornographic, because if they have a 24-hour turnaround and they get something flagged, it may well be that the response is just to take something down. So, for instance, you have your podcast. Somebody flags it as containing, whatever material. It might have to be taken down offline until somebody looks at it, and they may not want to go through. Like if your podcast is an hour, they may say it's easier for us to just take it down and never repost it rather than go through it.
Right. So he's talking about how when you flag something under this part of the legislation, it would be up to some employee at Facebook or Google to look through the content to make sure it's not violating some crime according to or some content violation according to not Facebook or Google, but to the Canadian government's classification of online content. See how convoluted that is? If you're the Facebook employee, you have to watch the content, consume the content, make this judgment call, or you can just take it down, because the consequence of making the wrong decision is you might have your corporation, Facebook, might get fined, what was it, millions of dollars. So a lot easier just to take it down.
for me as a content creator, your first 24 hours up online, your first 48 hours up online, and you know this from your very popular YouTube channel, that's when you get most of your views. That's when you get most of your clicks. And so if you get flagged, if you get essentially swatted, then, and it's taken down, you're not getting that back.
That's especially, the graph is basically, it goes straight up and then plateaus in terms of views. You get almost everything within that first 24, 48 hours.
And if you have a really good 24 to 48 hours, you can keep going. But if you don't, it's just flat the whole time.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. If you got hit in that time. And especially, you could also consider, what if you happen to get the big scoop? You've got the story no one else has. You get a picture of a politician like breaking into his ex-wife's house, something stunning like that.
Yeah.
You posted online, the political party that this targets might have an incentive to make a false report. It gets knocked down for 24 hours. Everyone's talking about it, but you're not getting the traffic of everyone wanting to come and see your pictures. And by the time you get it back online, those pictures are probably now everywhere. And so they've managed to effectively punish you for getting this report by preventing you from successfully monetizing it.
And if you can't make money in this game, then you're out of business. So,
well, you just keep doing that if there's a particular news organization that is critical of a particular party, you just keep sniping them every time they try to make money, and pretty soon they go out of business. The abuse potentials for this become very high.
Huge.
Interesting how, once again, they're talking about the monetary implications of having your stuff taken down. They never really brought up they never used the word censorship, but like that's kind of, it could easily be used that way too, right? If there's information that's out there that you don't want out there that makes XYZ look bad, then yeah, you get it taken down within 24 hours, doesn't go nearly as viral, right? So there's censorship potential. Imagine there was a government that wanted to censor its own citizens. I know that's kind of like hard. It's not part of the conversation we're having here. Apparently that's not really coming up, but imagine a world where the government didn't want to censor its own citizens and had no intention of doing that ever.
Let me ask you about Section 13 coming back. I was part of the campaign from about 05-06 until 2011. I think it was withdrawn to get rid of Section 13. And for this to come back, it seems like the language is trying to be a bit more nuanced. It's trying to have some parameters around it in ways that it didn't before. But I'm still concerned about the Human Rights Commission and the Human Rights Tribunal being able to fine someone $20,000 based on an anonymous complaint of someone who may or may not have been actually harmed by what was said or done. And then it becomes a money-making opportunity for people. Like we were saying, instead of taking away the monetization ability for a news organization, let's say, you're making it so that someone can make 20 grand a pop every time they complain that Ian Runkle, well, he said something I don't agree with. Ian Runkle said something that's against the Human Rights Code.
And I think we've already seen Jessica Yaniv, for instance, filed a bunch of complaints and has not had a whole lot of success at the Human Rights Tribunal, but has filed complaints that have been found to be unfounded and apparently for sort of purposes of, it looks to me like money making. And so if we see that kind of practice going on, you may have bad actors who are just like, all right, let's go like sniping these for profit. But you may also see a lot of reporting just as people saying, well, this is a way to tie someone up. I don't like what they're saying. I'll make a complaint. Now they're tied up in this human rights tribunal stuff. It can become very difficult to be any sort of political commentator at that point if you're always getting tied up in it.
I think back to Mark Stein's famous case with this. One of the complaints about it was and this is very timely because we're hitting the month of Ramadan, and this joke only makes sense to you and is only funny if you actually understand Islam in Ramadan. And one of Mark's comments was, is it just me, or does Ramadan come earlier every year? And of course it does, because it comes around every 11 and a half months. So yes, that's funny. But somebody said, no, that's an insult to Islam. No, it's not. It comes around earlier every year.
It's a calendar
hilarious
joke. It's
yes. And he was tied up with that for a very long time. And that becomes expensive, and then you start self-censoring.
We saw the case of the Quebecois comedian who made jokes about a disabled child singer, who then ended up having to go to the Supreme Court as to whether or not that was a violation. I'm sure that was a ton of money on the line for that process. Every time somebody is controversial, and I know that there's people who are going to say, oh, this just affects, the other people on the side of politics, so I don't care because it'll go after the people I don't like. It will, I guarantee you, be used against the side that you like as well. So if you are a right-winger, think about what happens if somebody is critical of, any sort of sexuality, etc. If you're on the left, think about what happens when somebody posts something in favor of, diversity, equity, and inclusion sorts of things. All of these things could be targeted under these provisions and tie people up. And we may end up with a world where we just can't talk online without people sniping us into court.
Apparently,
is there no fight in Runkle? We may end up in a world, and you're just gonna roll over and let that happen? That's so crazy to me. We may end up in a world where we just can't talk online anymore, and you're okay with that, or you've accepted that that's our fate. There's nothing we can do. Where I guess we're just gonna live in a dystopia. What is this? Come on, man. The demoralization in that comment is crazy.
Happens if somebody is critical of, any sort of sexuality, etc. If you're on the left, think about what happens when somebody posts something in favor of, diversity, equity, and inclusion sorts of things. All of these things could be targeted under these provisions and tie people up. And we may end up with a world where we just can't talk online without people sniping us into court.
Apparently the Human Rights Tribunal.
That sounds like such a nightmare. We may end up in a world. Where's the moral outrage? Can we get morally outraged about something? Where's the fight? Oh man. He's got the aura. We can fight this, Runkle. We can make this go away. We got to fight for it though.
Tribunal, by the way, is already fully backed up without these provisions. So all of this is going to cost us a lot more, because we're going to have to hire a lot more people to police everything we're saying and doing, guys, and thinking.
They're all using will. This is going to happen when this isn't. No. It's not going to pass. It's not going to pass.
Is this? I don't deny that either on the child exploitation, the revenge porn side, or on the other side, that there are serious issues here. But do you get the sense that the government is trying to show that they take it very seriously by having very serious sentences, very serious fines, that they are using a sledgehammer to take on a fly, when they could have done this in a much more nuanced way, dealt with the issues that are bothering people in a way that's charter compliant, that doesn't lead to the swatting, and that isn't just about performance?
I would love to see a much more nuanced, much more targeted bill. And there's no reason why they can't approach this incrementally. They can say, listen, let's go after the most like the worst stuff that everyone agrees is bad. Because there are provisions in here that I think are good, and provisions that I think are well intentioned that can be later cut, later fixed in ways that will.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's got good intentions. What does that ever count for, though, Runkle, in legislation? Who cares if it has good intentions? What does it actually say? What's the actual result?
Will make them good, but they just want to cover so much provisions that I think are well intentioned that can be later cut, later fixed in ways that will make them good. But they just want to cover so much stuff that this ends up including everything from really, really bad content to hurt feelings. And it's the hurt feelings area that really can cause huge problems. And it can end up, the courts may end up having to look at these provisions, and because they're so broad, it can be, listen, we have to throw out the baby with the bathwater because you haven't given us any other choice.
Throw it out. Throw the whole thing out. I agree with that.
I think we do need some additional provisions to deal with things like revenge porn and, targeted deep fakes and these kinds of things. But they have to be done carefully, and they have to be done with nuance. And I think this bill needed a lot more study than it got before it was brought forward again. So,
oh, well, it needs a lot more study. Arif was talking about, hey, we put so much time into this. We put so much time into this. Years. We took years. We took years into this bill, and we believe that we have struck in the best balance. Well, Runkle disagrees with you, Arif.
I have real concerns.
All right. Ian Runkle, thank you very much for your time today.
And they have to be done with nuance. And I think this bill needed a lot more study than it got before it was. I think we do need some additional provisions to deal with things like revenge porn and, targeted deep fakes and these kinds of things.
I mean, just to be like devil's advocate for this, it's like, what if we just need to encourage better internet literacy and better sort of, more cautionary messages to young people of how to use and consume the internet? And I mean, at the same time, even as I say that, I feel like kids probably on average know more than the grown-ups when it comes to like how to use the internet and move around on the internet. So I do think it's like they're kind of closer to the internet than the older generation. Like, people in their 20s are much more better versed on internet culture, how to disseminate if something is fake or real or not, than the older generations, or at least that's what I've found. And yeah, I just feel like this idea of we need to control the internet is totally misguided, because it is, because it's all it's going to amount to is what you have in China. At the end of the day, like, maybe it's just like a fallacy to try, or it's like it's misguided to try and control the internet, because you're always just going to get a greedy government that wants more money and control, no matter how you cut it. So it's never going to work, because the government is always just going to be looking for more control and money. How is it ever going to be done in a fair and lawful manner? And the other, the major points missed in this conversation was the trucker convoy, political prisoners, how there's already evidence of this, of the Crown persecutors using all sorts of laws to pin on political dissidents, people who have opinions that are very critical of the government. They are already throwing on lots of any legislation they could. And there's still political prisoners having to deal with this since the trucker convoy. Why did that not come up in the context of Bill C-63? All I heard during this whole conversation was this naive sort of idea of like, no, I mean, it'll surely if someone is charged for a pre-crime, it won't be done because of this. It won't be done just because someone's criticizing a group of people. You sure about that? You sure about that? Because Diagolon Jeremy McKenzie, Ferryman, Derek, they were talked about in the news media for that same crime of criticizing a group of people. You know, and we know full well how coordinated the news media is with the messaging of the Liberal government. And this idea that Bill C-63 won't be used as a toolkit for them to further punish people with the wrong opinions is just totally naive to me. It's totally like, what planet are you guys living on? That's not a possibility that should be considered. And it's worth mentioning too that, and this is an interesting topic. I would love to see more people talk about this topic because it was only kind of brought up to me from one doctor on the West Coast, this Asian gentleman. I forget his name at the moment, but he was talking about how, you know, lawyers kind of love political prisoners, and they love this whole kind of thing happening since the convoy because it's a lot of business for them. We need to talk about the idea that lawyers are salivating at the thought of these bills passing. Because let's face it, Runkle's a criminal lawyer. And what do you need? What does a criminal lawyer need to stay in business? He needs criminals. He needs crimes. If a legislation is going to be passed to like expand the definition of crime or expand the reasons why someone might come to him to need his defense, that's good for business. That's great for business for these lawyers. You know, that's, hey, wow, business is great. You know, for the whole freedom thing, yeah, people are kind of getting thrown in jail for their political opinions and, you know, persecuted for having, you know, much less than committing a crime, just kind of saying mean stuff online. But business is great for me. You know, I just bought a swimming pool, just bought a new villa in Italy. You know, yeah, and that's I think it's an important thing to bring up because, yes, lawyers are experts. Lawyers look into this stuff. They're very autistic with everything. They also like making money, though. And you probably can't help but look at it from that perspective. This would be a great industry for us. This would be fantastic. But yeah, we are gonna wrap it up here, guys. Thanks for tuning in here. Some good clips in there. Good clips in there. Hey, big super chat from Daryl Skird with $5. Have you seen Rowan Atkinson's recent comments comparing Britain's new laws with some of his old comedy sketches? Is that Mr. Bean? Rowan Atkinson's? I think I've seen this clip, but I think it was actually kind of from a little while ago. Like maybe about a year ago or something like this. But I will, that's a good clip to look up, though. I will look up that clip because I know, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, he's talking all about free speech and this sort of thing. I'll write that in for next time, so you don't have to watch that video of the Indian guy talking about how we're being invaded. Kelly Lloyd says, good points, Greg. Thank you for the stream. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. If you guys want to support free speech, if you want to help us save free speech, then please go to givesendgo.com/savefreespeech. Help fund our documentary. It's in the works. It's really good. We've been releasing some clips on our channels, and this goes to pay the editors. This goes to pay the people producing this fine piece of content that's going to expose what Bill C-63 is actually about. We need to have that information out there so we can arm the Canadian public to resist this bill. Whoa! Big donation from Kim and Kevin Watson with the $100. We have to stop this insane bill. So true. Thank you for the huge donation, Kim and Kevin Watson. Really appreciate it. And I totally agree. And I do want to shout out this donation from the other night. I really liked his message. We don't stop this by giving in. Our only chance is to fight it. I'll take a slim chance over no chance. Exactly. Let's fight it. Let's throw it out. EdgyDT Viz says, shoutouts Juan's Butter. He's actually based. So subscribe to Don't Talk TV. Greg, you should interview him. Yeah, I heard he's another lawyer who's been talking about this bill. Greg, have Christine on from Canadian Constitution Foundation. That's another good idea. Another great idea. Absolutely. There's a lot of people we could talk to about this bill. Although there's a lot of videos I need to there's a couple of very important videos that I need to make, and they need to be very good. And which is really the bread and butter of what we do at SaveFreeSpeech.ca, which is to make these videos ringing the alarm bells, explaining the bill. So I might stream next week, but that's something that I really need to, that's really a priority for us, for me at SaveFreeSpeech.ca, to get those videos out. And there's a lot of stuff that I need to do on that front. But thank you for hanging out in chat. I saw some really nice comments. Lampshade Etiquette said, thanks, Greg. We all thank you for everything you're doing. Appreciate it. Happy to do it. Voltman Platonomous says, the government doesn't care about charters and rights. Look at the Coots 4. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, the Coots 4 didn't come up. These are people, man, it's crazy how they did not bring up in that conversation anything about political prisoners in this country. The naivety is crazy. The naivete is insane. But no, it's good. It's good. We're talking about it. We're making it happen. Yeah. Thanks for all your comments. We're going to wrap it up here. Really appreciate it. Yeah, also, if we're also on Twitter at Save Free Speech. Sorry, that's not the at. The at is SFS Canada. SFS Canada. Follow us on the Twitter. We are the same thing on the Facebook. Facebook.com/SFS Canada. And we're also on Instagram. We have some really cool stuff cooking up that might be out by next week. It'll either be out by next week or beginning of September, but it's going to be a really good thing. Talking about the gender ideology, talking about Soji, talking about Antifa, and obviously how it all relates to Bill C-63. We got to get rid of this naivete. Got to get rid of this naivete. All this naiveness around this bill is crazy. It's killing me. It's driving me crazy, guys. Crazy. But hey, thanks again for tuning in. Where is our song, Greg? You want me to play a song? What time is it? I could maybe play a quick song. There is a new song. I don't know if it's ready to be played yet, but if Lee's requesting a song, I'll play a new song that I've been tinkering on. Where is it? All right. Give me a sec to set up here. Where's my picks at? Where's my tuner at? Hold on, folks. Hold on. Okay, there's the pick. Be back in a sec. just do it the old-fashioned way. Tuner? We don't need no stinking tuners. Nah, it's a good habit to tune. This is the old-fashioned way.
From idea to submission, empower.
Back in my day. Well, what happened here? Guys, we're gonna guys, we're gonna react to this tuning video. Ready? Yeah, is that loud enough or what? Is that loud enough? I think I just need... Jesus. Thanks, Carl. Carl says, thank you, Greg. I'm starting from the beginning and I'll try to leave a meaningful comment. Appreciate that. My E is scuffed, says EdgyD TV. You're crazy. Good enough for me. All right. All right. So this is, have you guys heard of Beck? The artist Beck. This is a cover of, or like a parody, I guess. It's not that funny of a parody, but it's just kind of like a rewrite of one of his songs. Yeah, okay, let's try this. Okay. Tonight the city is full of jeets, and the toilets are overflowing. A child rapist gets a slap on the wrist if they have the darker of skin. That's right. It's anti-white. It's anti-white. Yeah, they hate whites. Give the finger to the rock and roll singer as he spits upon your history. Crosses torn down through the blood-soaking ground, and on the TV tells you to hate yourself. That's right. It's anti-white. There's rising crime. Open your eyes. So get out your lead pipe dreams. Get out your 10-foot flags. The insects are huge and they reign over you. And the drugs won't save your daughters and sons. That's right. It's anti-white. It's not far right. It's just anti-white. I'll do the first verse again. Tonight the city is full of jeets, and the toilets are overflowing. Child rapists get a slap on the wrist if they have the darker color of skin. That's right. It's anti-white. white. There's rising crime. They hate whites. There you go. Hey. You can blame Lee. You can blame Lee for forcing me to sing that song. Yeah, if you're curious, no, not trying to show you the ad. It's a song from Beck, from one of his like first albums or whatever.
The feeling of not jogging, the feeling of winning, number one.